Welcome to Sew with Monty. Today I want to show you how to grade. And grading is creating multiple sizes off an original pattern. We're working with a small t-shirt or torso block, and I'm going to grade up to a medium. The first thing you want to do is develop your grade strategy, how much you're going to let it grow to the next size. And my overall growth on this pattern is going to be a 1/2 inch in width and 3/4 in total length. Now in certain areas it'll be the full amount. In other areas I have to divide that up. For instance, my side seam and my armhole have to be a division of the 3/4. So I've let my side seam stay a 1/2 inch and my armhole will grow in length 1/4. Now up here it gets a little more complicated. I've got the width of my armhole, the shoulder, and my neckline to consider within the 1/2 inch width. So what I'm doing is letting the width of the armhole grow 1/8, the shoulder will grow 1/4, and the width of the neckline will grow 1/8. The front, again, will have to be divided into 3/4. So the entire front will be 5/8, with the growth of the neckline drop 1/8. So it's a little confusing, but you want to divide out the sections that have multiple landmarks. I call the corners landmarks. You need to divide that out so that in proportion it equals back to the total amount you want it to grow. So for instance, if this is a 1/2 inch width, my armhole width, my shoulder, and my neckline width totals back to a 1/2, 1/8, 1/4, and 1/8. My side seam is a 1/2 and 1/4. That totals 3/4 in the total growth of my length. So let's get started. The first thing I've done is drawn a registration line to keep this center front line booked to. The second thing I've done is drawn a home line, I call it, in the center of the pattern that's directly perpendicular to the registration line. I call it a home line, that's my name for it, but I want to keep this line away from any landmarks. I don't want it entering underarm points or anything that's critical to the pattern's corners or landmarks. So I've put it down here in the midriff area so that I can keep an eye on it and it's a lot simpler to operate. The first thing after you draw your home line is you want to pick one point on your pattern that becomes your home point. And I'm going to use this center front neck here as my home point. So I'm marking that, and that's how I'm going to get started. If the way I know that I've done it correctly is I'm going to end up back at this point. And when I end up back here, then I'll know my grade is correct. Another little tip, I've marked all this in ink so you can see it, but on your pattern you really should do it in pencil. That way you can erase it if you make a mistake. In fact, everything that you're doing should be in pencil in case you've made a mistake. Now as we go along, we're only going to mark the landmarks, corners, or definite characteristics in the pattern that need to be marked. We're not drawing in solid lines. So let's get started. From this point right here to the end of my t-shirt, the hem, it needs to grow 5/8 of an inch. So I'm going to come here on my home line and I'm going to draw a line 5/8 inch below it like this. And I'm going to slide the home line on my pattern down until it meets this line. Just like that. Now I mark only this corner. Now the next move is the width, the total width to get to this corner, it has to grow a 1/2 of an inch. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to mark a 1/2 inch line away from my registration line. And make sure you stay nice and parallel to all your lines. And then I'm going to put it back on the corner it was on, and I'm going to slide it over until I book the center front to that 1/2 inch line I just drew. And then once I'm there, making sure I'm right on all my lines. You want to make sure your lines are nice and square so that you don't have a distorted pattern. I only mark that corner. Now my next move is the side seam is going to come up a 1/2 inch. So I want to be a 1/2 inch above where I am right now. So I'm going to make sure my pattern is lined up, and I'm going to come up here and draw another line to adjust the home line on my pattern to. So I'm going to slide it up a 1/2 inch, keeping it on the inside line here where I've adjusted it on the registration, the vertical side. Once I'm there, I'm going to mark this line. So it's like from one point to the next point, you figure out how much you need to move it, make the marks, adjust it, and move. Now this armhole has 2 moves in it before we can mark the shoulder line or shoulder point. It's going to come in 1/8 and up 1/4. So my first mark is I'm going to make an 1/8 of an inch mark on the vertical side, like this. And I'm going to come over 1/8, keeping all my lines nice and square. And then I'm going to move up 1/4. So off of the home line on the pattern, I'm going to make lines to slide up here. Now it's very important. You think after you've done this a few times, and I've been guilty of this, oh, I'll just make all the lines prior to, and then I'll just move on them. Very confusing if you do that. You need to make each line when you need it and focus on that line while you're working. Otherwise you can really lose it with all these lines. So one at a time, one step at a time. So we came in 1/8, we went up 1/4, and now we've marked this shoulder. Now we need to come over another 1/4 to get this high point shoulder mark on our shoulder seam. So I'm going to come over 1/4, I'm going to draw my line in, and then I'm just going to slide it over 1/4. That's the only move that this has, is this 1/4 movement. Staying parallel to my registration line and on the home line, the adjusted home line. I'm going to mark this 1/4, this high point shoulder corner right here. Now, my next move is I've got to come down 1/8 and in 1/8. So I've already got an 1/8 line mark right here, so I'm just going to slide down on it. That's the first move. See, I'm right on there. And then I'm going to come over 1/8 like this. And this is the test to see if you've done it right. When I come down and in, I'm back on my original home line, and I'm back where my home point was. So that means that I've done the grade correctly. Now the next part of this is, I've got all my landmarks marked. Now I need to fill in the blanks. So I'm going to take the hemline and I'm going to split it evenly, same amount on both sides here, and I'm going to draw in my shape using the pattern as a template. So I do the same thing on the side seam. This way I know my waist suppression isn't high or low. It's right in the middle as it should be. Now with the sleeve, I'm going to come in 1/8 and down 1/4. And I'm going to keep this consistent blending method so that every time I make a size, my notches are in the right proportion place, and all my curves are the right proportion. Across the shoulder, it's an 1/8 and an 1/8 blend on each side. That totals 1/4. And then the neck, the same thing. I'm going to go an 1/8 on the front, an 1/8 at the top, and blend in the rest of the neck. This way my curves don't get flat or distorted. So now I have a medium front. So let me set up and we'll do the back and go from there. Now we're ready to grade the back. And before we get started, we want to make sure that the grade strategy on the back is compatible to the grade strategy on the front. For instance, the width at my base of my armhole is an 1/8 here, so it's going to be an 1/8 here. The overall side seam is going to be a 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. My shoulder is 1/4, this one's 1/4. So that everything that is in the back will grow the same way that the front grows, and they'll be able to be sewn back together with the same size seams. Now the only difference in the back from the front is back here we're not letting the drop of the back neck grow at all. So the entire back length is going to be 3/4 of an inch. The only place the neck will grow in the back is an 1/8 because of the drop being so shallow. Now we're going to get started. We have our registration line here and our home line here. So I'm going to mark my home point right here. And then I'm going to move down the entire 3/4 of an inch so that I can mark my center back hemline. So I'm going to make my line right here at the home line. You want to get in the habit of doing your lines around your home line, because if you start doing it out here, maybe most of your patterns will be fine. But if you have patterns that have odd shapes or angles, this can get tricky. So you always want to balance off vertical and horizontal here and keep your lines all here where you can see what you're doing. So I'm going to slide down until I've hit my 3/4 mark, and that's the only move that I have on this center back line. So I'm going to mark my center back hemline, and then I'm going to look at my next landmark and what I've got to do to get there. So I need to go this way 1/2 of an inch. So I'm going to move my pattern out of the way just temporarily, and I'm going to draw in my 1/2 inch line here, and I'm going to come back and book my adjusted 3/4 line from my home line, and I'm going to move it over the 1/2 inch and mark this corner. Corners only, remember, don't mark your inside lines. Now this has to grow up 1/2 inch. So I'm going to take my ruler, and from where I'm at right now, always from where you're at, you're going to come up 1/2 inch. And I'm just going to slide it up the 1/2 inch that gets my side seam. So now I've adjusted my side seam growth, and I'm going to mark this corner. Now this armhole grows in width and length, so I've got 2 moves here, just like I had on the front. I'm going to come over 1/8 and up 1/4. So the first thing I'm going to do is mark my 1/8 of an inch over, right here. And then I've got 1/4 up, which is what I've got left right here from where I'm at. So I'm going to come over the 1/8, and then I'm going to slide back up to my original home line, and that's going to give me my point here. So to get here, I went over 1/8 and up 1/4. Now to get this point, I need to come over another 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to mark 1/4 inch here, and I'm going to slide it directly over. The shoulder only has 1 move, 1/4 over, and I'm going to mark it here. Now my neck has only 1 move, 1/8 over, and as you can see, right there it is. If I come back to my registration line, I'm exactly at home point. So that tells me the grade was correct. I didn't get off anywhere or do anything that I shouldn't have done. Now, all I want to do is simply blend out the areas in between. So I'm going to start here at the neckline. I just popped it over 1/8 of an inch and blended it out. I'm going to center my shoulder and do the same here. So it's very similar to what we did in the front. This is 1/4 down and 1/8 in. I'm doing the same blending method. Just always be conscious of what you do on each side so that your blend stays the same and you don't distort your grade. So there's the 1/2 inch seam allowance, or 1/2 inch growth on the side seam, and now the 1/2 inch at the hemline. And now it's that simple. I have my medium back. So now it's time to do the sleeve. So let me get set up, and we'll grade the sleeve and see our beautiful graded pattern. So now we're ready to grade the sleeve that fits into the front and back torso. And I have my registration line on here. Now this is different because I don't have a straight edge center, front, or back. I'm working off the grain line this time. So sometimes when you have pattern pieces that have no center, back, straight, front line, you have to go inside the pattern. This grain line will be my registration line. I've made my home line here. Now I could have put it at the bicep level line, but again, I don't want my home line to interfere with any landmarks, and this comes straight into my underarm points, which could get confusing. So I've moved it down and put it in the middle of the sleeve, and this will be my home line. My grade is also compatible to my armhole and my torso. So if it grew 1/4 of an inch in height, the armhole, the cap is going to grow 1/4 inch in height. Each section here in the width of the sleeve grows 1/8 of an inch, just like the width of the armhole, 1/8 and 1/8, which is 1/4 total in width. So 1/4 up, 1/4 wide. I've used the 1/4 wide all the way down the entire sleeve because I want my wrist opening to only grow 1/4 here as well. So it'll open up entirely 1/4 inch throughout the width of the sleeve. The sleeve cap from bicep up will grow 1/4. And the sleeve overall length from the cap bicep level line down will grow 1/2 inch. So it's all registered now, so let's go ahead and start. I'm going to make this lower point on my wrist my home point, right here. And my first move is, I'm going to come up a 1/2 inch to my sleeve cap. So I'm going to simply draw my line here at my home line, a 1/2 inch up. And I'm going to slide my sleeve up right on my grain line, that 1/2 inch. And when my home line lines up with the 1/2 inch adjustment, I'm going to make the underarm point on the back of my sleeve. Now this gets a little tricky because I don't really have a corner here, but my next move is to come over a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to come over a 1/4 inch, and I'm going to just do a 1/4 inch here like this, and I'm going to do a 1/4 inch down here. Now I don't really have a corner at the top, so I'm going to do it a little bit differently. So I'm going to slide over a 1/4 inch, and I'm going to get this point first and then come back to the sleeve cap. So I'm going to come over a 1/4 and line up with my 1/4 line and draw in this point. Now my next move is I want to get this area. So I'm going to come up a 1/4 inch to get the cap height. So I'm going to mark the 1/4 inch right here. Now I needed this so I could balance this point, because I'm going to slide back to the center between this gap, this 1/4 inch gap, so I'm dead center of it, and I'm going to slide my pattern up until I'm at my 1/4 inch line, making sure I'm dead center of the gap here and here. And then I'm going to just do the sleeve cap only, not down in here, just this area right here. Okay, so now I'm going to come back and I'm going to realign with my underarm point at my front, and I'm going to go back down until I get this point. So I have to come down a 1/2 inch. I'm already over the 1/4, so I have to come down the 1/2 inch, keeping on my 1/4 inch overline. And once I have that very accurately placed, I can draw this in. So now I have my outside corners of my sleeve. So I'm going to come back, I'm going to blend off the easy parts first. You always remember, like I said before, that you blend the same way. And another helpful hint, if you're doing multiple sizes, like let's say you're going up to maybe an XL or double XL off this, what I do is I do all the larger sizes first, and I do all the same pieces first. So I would grade all the fronts larger, and then I would grade all the backs larger, sleeves larger. Then I come back and I do all the fronts smaller, so forth and so on. That way I don't get confused. I'm doing the same method, the same technique over and over, and the repetition keeps me from getting confused. Now right here I'm just going to come over 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to center my bicep level line between my 1/4 inch here, and I'm going to draw in this lower notch. And then I just want to move it up a little bit here. Actually, I want to kind of blend this off like this. And then I'm going to do the top down to it and then blend off like this. So I'm using this template to do this curve. So again, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to center my bicep level line, so I'm 1/8 on each side, and I'm going to get through the notch part. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take the rest of my curve and blend off the rest of my sleeve like this, the other 1/4 inch. And you want to use the same method. Every time you do a sleeve cap, don't change it. That way they'll all nest properly and they'll be in the same proportion. So the easy parts are down the side, 1/4 inch here, blend this off. And I now have a medium sleeve. And that's how you grade to a larger size. I'm going to do a part 2 video to show you how to do smaller sizes coming up. If you enjoyed the video, please click on the like button below the screen. And also, if you'd like to see more of my videos on my channel, So with Monty, click on the subscribe button, and that way you'll be able to see much more. There's also a little bell next to subscribe. If you click on that, you'll be notified as new videos show up. So I'll see you later, and we'll do another sleeve grade on the smaller sizes.